Starting off at number 100 is Medieval. And so for this version of Medieval here that I would have on this list, it would probably be honestly the PlayStation 5 version. They made a lot of improvements on that one with not only the graphics, but just with some of the control elements of it. But I still have a soft spot for the PlayStation 1 version here. And really, what I love about this game is I am a big fan of Tim Burton's older work, like things like Beetlejuice and Nightmare Before Christmas. I just think he has a very unique aesthetic. And this game really feels like it was something that he would have, created back then. But here's just a little bit of information on it, as you can see on the screen here, that I don't know how accurate a lot of this is, but it seems to be fairly accurate. But basically, it was an action-adventure game, and it was developed by Sony. Oh, but there was I forgot the name of the developer, but they've done a lot of other great games. Like I think they did other games like Primal and Ghost Hunter 2 on the PlayStation 2, which were really excellent as well too. But really creative game, and it's your knight that he was kind of revered as a legendary champion, but in reality, the truth is that he was killed in battle pretty quickly, and it's still and then it's kind of like he comes back from the dead as a skeleton, and because the evil wizard is back, trying to wreak havoc across the land, and so here's your chance to redeem yourself, right, to really put a stop to him this time. And just a fun game. I love the setting to it, the music, the overall charm of the game, I guess you can say. It is a bit clunky. The controls are definitely a bit clunky. The sword play on it is not the best, admittedly, but it's still, I think it's just the overall I guess just the vibe of the game is just what I really have a fun time coming back to this one here. And the graphics for the PlayStation were not too bad back then. Like I said, the remake that has come out of it is probably going to be one that you would want to pick up more. But it's still a very fun game, however you choose to play it. The remake, you can play it on the PlayStation 4, and then also it's backwards compatible with the PlayStation 5. The PlayStation 1 version, the only way I know how to get it through like retail or a digital storefront is on the PlayStation 3. But even I'm pretty sure I want to say I think they've been removing some games from there, so I don't even know if this one is still on there. But I do have that version as well too. But yeah, just a very fun game. And if you've never played it before, again, you're going into some jank here. It's back then, and this is because this game came out in what did it say, there 1998 or so, and so it came out where we had already had a few years into 3D gaming, and so developers were starting to get a little bit more comfortable with how to, make your character control in 3D. This one, even though it came out a little bit later in the fifth generation lifetime, it still struggles from some of that though. But again, I think the game just has an overall charm and appeal to it that I think you can really get into if you like the sort of gothic sort of style. And it's pretty funny too. It doesn't take itself too seriously. And the cutscenes here, as you can see, like the CG cinemas were actually really good for the time. And again, this is on the PlayStation 1 version. They cleaned them up a lot on the PlayStation 5 or the PlayStation 4 version, but this still looks really good. And again, the music is charming. Check it out. It's. I think that if you can get past the somewhat, old, and broken controls, I think that you can still have a really fun time with this one. And it has a bit of Metroidvania to it, where there's you reach a level and then you can't get past a certain part because you need a certain power up, and then you find it later, then you can go back to it. So it does have a bit of that. And you can also collect these spirits of the enemies you defeat, which fills up a chalice each stage. And if you get 100% in it, then you got to go into this Hall of Heroes area where you can upgrade, you can get either a new weapon or upgrade something. And so it kind of gives it, incentive to explore around in the stages, and also you can find a lot of cool stuff. But yeah, just a very, very fun game, very creative. And this part here I thought was pretty cool. The CG animation and the detail of the characters at the time I thought was pretty top notch. That was something outside of Square or Namco, which were probably the two main companies that were really doing these kind of CG cinemas really good. But this one was it's pretty detailed and all. And as you can kind of see right from the aesthetic of the game, it's something that doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's still got its kind of creepy, spooky vibe. So if you want to play something, for example, like for Halloween, but you got some kids around and you don't want it to be too super creepy, I think this would be a fun game to check out. But yeah, or Medieval. Hopefully this is a game that you'll give it a shot if you've never played of. But if you have, let me know what you think about it. Coming in at 99 is another game that I am pretty sure came out in 1998 as well too. So if Medieval came out in 1998 also, and then this game, well, it's just another game that came out in this legendary era of video games. I think for some of you, maybe you've heard that 1998 was just one of the best years in gaming. And well, right off to start off the bat, right, here's two of them. I got to double check on Medieval again. I know it said 1998 on that thing, but I want to double check that is actually the year it came out in. But I know this one did. And as you can see, just one thing that was really popular in this generation, in the 5th generation, with these CG cutscenes. And so, again, the one that you saw in Medieval was really good. But Squaresoft, as they were known at the time, was really great at them. And this is an example here. Nowadays the video looks a little grainy and some of the character models aren't the best, but they were getting really detailed, really cinematic. Whoever was directing them, definitely something that, you can see from a movie or so. And so they were getting really good with this stuff here. But that's not what this game is. It's I just like this little intro here at the start. But what this game is sort of a blend of kind of RPG mechanics with survival horror almost. I wouldn't say a survival horror because in terms of like, that you have limited resources and all that. But I would say kind of more because of the, maybe not survival horror, but just more horror. RPG horror, I guess, is one way to play. I guess maybe the way I would categorize this game. And it's fairly short, so don't expect like a really long game like a lot of Squaresoft games were back then. It is probably more in line, maybe a little bit longer than some of the Resident Evil games from back then. But it has the same perspective, the same polygonal characters with on a like a pre-rendered backdrop. And so that it definitely is similar to the Resident Evil games. But only the mechanics on it it's like an RPG where when you fight an enemy, it's turn-based. You have like your ATB gauge, and then you attack an enemy, right? And then they attack you and so forth. So in that sense, it's definitely an RPG. And then you get powers on it and all, what you can say are like your magical powers. So, without giving too much on the plot. But just a fun game. And what I loved about it too also is one thing that Final Fantasy VII really kind of started making me appreciate and wanting more of is more Final Fantasy VII obviously takes place in a whole different, world, right, outside from ours. But because of its more kind of modernish sort of sensibilities, it did it did make me yearn for some kind of a modern RPG, like set in our times. And this one kind of fit that bill for me at the time because it came out in 1988, 1 year after Final Fantasy VII. And because it takes place in New York, and at the time, the modern, maybe like a few years after 1998. I don't quite recall what supposedly this year takes place in, but it was I thought it was pretty cool, right? Because it's something that I felt like I always kind of wanted, and so it was pretty cool to see something like this come out then. And so as you can see, you got the polygonal characters there with the pre-render backdrop. And so here's your main character, Aya Bria. She's a New York Police Department officer. And she's a pretty cool character. You can name her whatever you want, but I just always just stick to her regular name. And yeah, I mean, the story, it plays out like kind of like a buddy cop detective sort of story, but with supernatural elements to it. And it's, what I understand, it's loosely based on a Japanese novel, which I believe was turned into a show or a movie of some sort. From what I've seen, I remember watching a documentary on this some time ago, and it's very loosely based, as my understanding. But that's where it originally got its inspiration from. So, you know, if you ever curious, like, is this a completely original work? Kinda, but kinda not, you know. But Tetsuya Nomura did the character designs. Again, as you can see, very much like the Final Fantasy games from the 5th generation or Resident Evil with the graphic style. And has great music. I could be wrong on this, but I want to say the composer is from Kingdom Hearts, I believe, and then eventually Final Fantasy 15. I could be wrong on that. I have to double check it. But if it's not her, then I'm sorry, I forget her name. But she's really great though, and if it's not her, it very has a style reminiscent to her. But here it has its little story here. But yeah, Parasite Eve, great game. I'm just going to show the little start of it here. I don't want to give too much away, but it's definitely worth checking out. Really fun game. So if you want to play like a more of a modernish sort of horror game that's not necessarily survival horror, definitely want to check out. And I think you'll really appreciate the story overall is really good. There's no voice acting in it, so it's you do have to read the text there. But it's pretty well written, I believe. And again, for the time, definitely the graphics were pretty impressive on it. And a lot of the power-ups or the powers that you get in this game eventually, and some of the scenarios you get put in some of these battles that you have to do are pretty fun. Some of them have some strategy to them and all that. It's kind of fun to figure out. So yeah, so definitely, if you've never played it, definitely check it out. I'm surprised. I wish it would get re-released because I believe it did pretty well for Square Enix or Squaresoft back then. But I'm wondering if it's maybe something to do with the licensing rights because again, it's not an original property. It does have roots in a Japanese novel, I believe, in a movie of some sort. So maybe that's why it hasn't really been re-released. But either way, check it out. Okay, coming in now at 98 is the all-time classic, The Legend of Zelda. This game, I've talked about this game before as far as my experience with it, and really what it was when I was a kid is I had a friend that we would go to his house, and he had an older brother, and his older brother seemed to be a little bit protective of his video games and all. We would have been about, let's see, so this game came out in, I think it says it down here, I know it's 1996, or 1986, I'm sorry, but yeah, February 21 of 1986. Why am I saying 96? But so I would have been a little bit, so let's say 6 or 7 years old at the time. And it was funny because his brother, I remember him telling him, like, don't touch my Nintendo and all. But then when he would leave, to go hang out with his buddies, because he was almost a teenager at the time. And so whenever he would leave, my friend would, go get the game from him in his upstairs room and then bring it over to another friend's house. And then we would play The Legend of Zelda. But he would be the only one to play it, though, because I guess he just didn't want to get in trouble with his brother. So I never actually played this game really as a kid. Or maybe I played it somewhere here and there, but somewhere else. But for the most part, I do remember watching him play. And we would try to help him, figure out where to go. And although I never played it back then as a kid, I was really always intrigued by this game because I just love the concept of it. Seems like you can just go anywhere in it. I just felt that was just pretty cool. And it just seemed like just a world where, it's just ripe with exploration, right? So I always wanted to get my hands on it, but never did really when I was younger. And it wasn't until I was older where I think I want to say the first time that I really started playing it was on the Wii Virtual Console. And actually, I will say that Wii Virtual Console was where I ended up getting a lot of games that I had always really wanted to play back then as a kid, but just never actually was able to own. Because again, I was more of a Sega kid. So mainly a lot of Nintendo games. And this was one of them that I played on there. And I got a little ways into it at the time. And then eventually just got this game through other means and all, and was finally able to beat it. I've actually beaten it like maybe 3 or 4 times now. Admittedly through using a strategy guide and save states, just because this game, I would have loved to have gotten lost in this world as a kid, but as an adult, it is a little bit much, right? But I do love going through the world though, still, even if I'm using a guide, to sort of show me where to go and all that. And it's a fun little game, really, and a lot of it is definitely nostalgia. Why I do have this game on here, because again, even though I didn't play it, it was just getting to experience the world and sort of live out my kid fantasies. That I really wanted to play this game back then. And, it's, the game is very, it's very archaic as far as like where as far as knowing where to go, but that's kind of the appeal of it. And part of the reason why I think like games like The Legend of Zelda also really resonated with a lot of people on this game was because of that, right? It just lets you do whatever you want. Let's see. Okay, what am I doing? Okay, there we go. But yeah, this little intro right here, right? Just the start of not only a great adventure, but also just the series as a whole. I mean, so many magical memories with this series, going from this one to, the second one, the Zelda 2 Adventures of Link. I know that one kind of stumbled out of the gate a bit and, wasn't the best impression for a lot of people as far as a sequel to it. But then on the Super Nintendo, we got A Link to the Past. And then after that, Ocarina of Time, and then so forth, right? And all the series just became really, excuse the pun, but legendary. And it all started right here. And what I really would wish is, I feel like if any Zelda game needs a remake of some sort, it's this one and the second one, because I feel like there's a lot of groundwork there to really improve on it a lot. Little tidbit though is that there was a remake, I guess you can say, of this game in a sense so back in the day, the Super Nintendo had it was kind of like a satellite service of some sort where somehow you download games onto your system. And one of the games that they had on this service was kind of like a remake of The Legend of Zelda, where it had cleaned up graphics a little bit more on par with what the Links to the Past looked like. And that game there, though, I wonder if it's available somehow to play, because I wouldn't mind checking that version out. But I mean, not a lot of people, I think, experienced that game, because again, it was for a service that was pretty niche, and then also it was in Japan only. But not sure if there's a way to play it somehow. But I guess that version did, exist at least to some extent. But yeah, The Legend of Zelda, just a blast to play through. Really fun game. Very hard. Like I said, you're gonna have a hard time with this game. But even with a walkthrough and all, it's still worth checking out to see where this series came from. All right, and now at number 97, we are at Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Right now, what's showing is the start of the Ground Zeroes version that came out first, but really when I say the Phantom Pain, I guess I'm including everything of it, right? With the Ground Zeroes and then the Phantom Pain that came out the next year all at once. Because Ground Zeroes came out in 2014 and then the Phantom Pain in 2015. And this game here, it's honestly, I was a bit disappointed with this game at first. I still am. I'm a huge Metal Gear Solid fan, and the first Metal Gear Solid game on the PlayStation 1, I mean, that game just blew me away. And then Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, at the time, I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. And I still think that game is great. And then there was Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, right? Which, again, another amazing title. And then we had Metal Gear Solid 4, which, had some issues with it and all, but still really, really liked that game a lot. And one of the things that all of them have in common, though, is, yes, they all have really great gameplay and all that, but it's also because of the story. I love the very convoluted, crazy story that these Metal Gear Solid games had. And so one thing that I always thought about them whenever I would play them is that's kind of what I would expect in them. This one, when I started playing it, it wasn't quite that. It wasn't quite. I could just tell already right now that it was going to be a little bit light on story. Although the cinemas are still really excellent, as you're seeing here, but the story to it and all kind of took a backseat in this one. But what really made me appreciate this game, though, more as I started playing it was, well, first of all, the graphics. I mean, these graphics are insane still looking. I mean, this still looks really good. This is an early 8th generation game, and I remember when I first booted this up, it was one of the first games that I said, holy crap, this is the next generation, right? And I was pretty floored by it. But then I started playing it, and then, I beat this demo here because it's kind of like a glorified demo. And then eventually when the Phantom Pain came out, I started playing it, and I was like, this is cool and all. I'm getting into it and all, but I don't know, something seemed off at first. But then once you get into the main meat of the game, right, where you're going on missions and all that, I kept playing it and playing it and playing it. And what I started realizing was that it is definitely one of the funnest open world sandbox games that I've ever played. And it's just because the level of freedom that you have to sort of make your own flow of how the game's going to go was really addicting. So you'll get a mission, for example, say, okay, you need to go into the space and you need to rescue so-and-so. Okay. But then when you get there, you're like, okay, well, how exactly do I do that? Well, that's part of the fun is you figure it out, right? And but the controls of the game, the tools that it gives you, the way you interact with the world and all, it really makes it fun to explore your options on how you're gonna carry out said mission. And I mean, some of the some of the funnest moments I've had in video gaming has been in this game, just sort of the chaos that creates, right? It's like something that didn't quite go the way I thought it would, but then eventually I was able to figure it out. Like I accidentally alarmed the soldier, right, and all, and ended up getting in a gunfight, had to blow up some things and all, and then steal a Jeep to book it out to my chopper that was waiting for me in somewhere out in the distance away from the enemy. And just the way you just sort of think on the fly on it was what I just really appreciated this game for. It's just a blast to play for that. And I'm actually kind of excited to try to go through this game again. This version that I'm showing here is on the Steam Deck, and this is the first time I bought it on the Steam Deck when it was for sale. So this one and the Phantom Pain, and I hadn't really messed around with it. And right now I just have it hooked up to the TV, and it looks pretty damn good on the Steam Deck here. I mean, the resolution seems to be a little bit less than, say, like, if I were to play it on my PS5, but it still looks pretty dang good. So it's good to know that this game seems to run really well, because it'd definitely be a cool game to play on handheld as well, too. But yeah, I mean, the game still looks stunning and all. And that's the other thing, too, also, right? You're going to get really great graphics. I do miss David Hayter in this. Kiefer Sutherland does, he's an amazing actor. I love him in a lot of movies and all that. And he does a fine enough job. I can see why they went with an actor like him, because, his voice is very iconic too. But there's not a whole lot of story in this game. A lot of the story, or where you would hear his voice acting, is in like these cassette tapes and all that you can listen to in the game. So his range is a bit limited as far as what he could do with this character. But even then, David Hayter was such an iconic thing to the character Solid Snake in this series, that it was a bummer to, for that he wasn't brought back for this one. My understanding, there was a lot of drama behind the scenes as to why he wasn't selected. And Hideo Kojima, I think he's definitely a mastermind as far as video games designs and his storytelling and all that. But he does seem to have this fixation with Hollywood, though, that unfortunately it sounds like he's might have burned some actors at the expense of trying to get like Hollywood talent on it, which is unfortunate, but just a reality of business, I guess. And I guess just the way he works. But whatever the case, though, this game is very fun, very enjoyable. If for some reason you haven't played this game, but you want just a fun, creative, open world stealth game, probably one of the best. And just wanted to let this little piece play right here for a bit. I just like it to the part where Snake shows up. But yeah, I remember when I first booted this up on the PlayStation 4, and I was like, oh my god, these are the graphics nowadays? The 60 frames per second, the characters are really detailed, and they're using what's called the Fox engine on this, which I could be wrong, but is this also the engine that... Well, there's the Decima engine. I don't know enough about that, so never mind. I'm not going to say anything. But it's kind of cool because it's kind of showing you the area that you're going to be messing around in here, right? As the helicopter's, flying over. But then you get Snake here, or XOF, but turned around, it's Fox for Foxhound. So he's getting his mission briefing, as you usually do in a lot of Metal Gear Solid games at the start. But everything's really brief, right? And because a lot of the older Metal Gear Solid games, it was, there's a lot of story that is given to you, right? As far as what you're doing, what you're set out, why you're in a certain area. And I do love that you just kind of get, it's a lot quicker to just get into this game faster than, say, some of the other games. But I do, like I said, when I play a Metal Gear Solid game, it's because I want kind of this crazy, espionage, anime-inspired, convoluted story, and all. And you don't really get it with this one, but you definitely get a fun game afterwards. Snakes looks pretty cool, too, in this one. Kept you waiting, huh? Okay, coming in at number 96 is Super Punch-Out! I like this one more than the Nintendo one. I'm kind of curious to see what the overall popularity is between the two of these. Like, which one do people generally prefer? Because I think it almost seems like people just talk more about the original Nintendo one, which is a great game. I love that game. But this one here, the graphics, the play mechanics, which is, some things were improved on and all, and I just prefer this one much more. Although I guess the one little nitpick that I have about it is I kind of wish it went back to the rounds, because the other one had, I think, 3 rounds, where this one is just more, I think you get 3 minutes or something like that. And I kind of prefer, I think, the older one, but just everything else about this game I just really appreciate more. This game came out in 1994, which is just another banger of a year for video games. And this was another game too so 1994 was an year that I really started getting into the Super Nintendo to some extent, because we had a buddy of ours that had Super Nintendo, and a lot of great games were coming out for it. Because I feel like the Super Nintendo got off to a pretty good start, and then it kind of, not that it was bad, but 1992, 1993, I want, you know, I mean, it had like the Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and also again, it wasn't like it was bad or anything, but I just feel like it wasn't really quite, you know, I don't know, there wasn't like a whole lot for it, at least for me personally, that really attracted me to the system. And again, I was a Sega kid, but I feel like, you know, 1991, 1992, and 1993 were just crazy good years for the Sega Genesis. I personally really feel that. Same with 1994 also. I think the Sega Genesis had a lot of great games. But the Super Nintendo came out with just some amazing games in this year, and then also 95 and 96, that it basically it finished out its lifetime, or I'm sorry, its lifespan in a really strong way. And Super Punch Out was one of the games that came out on it. Some of the games that are going to be probably on the list, right, and all was from this time frame as well too. And I mean, these were like, you know, not only good games, but some of the best of the best. And this game, as far as like arcade sports games, probably one of my favorite. It's just so fun to play. And it's, I mean, I don't really consider it like a sports game per se, or maybe not even so much like a fighting game, but kind of more like a, I don't know, like a fast paced puzzle game, really. I mean, when it comes down to it. But whatever, however you want to classify it, it's just a really fun game that the gameplay is very addicting, trying to figure out these fighters' patterns. And it's difficult too, also, where, you know, I mean, the difficulty alone will make it just addicting, right, to keep coming back to. I mean, it was like the old school games back in the day, right? You know, it's a challenge at first, but then, you know, you keep playing it over and over, you find the pattern, and then eventually you're able to get good enough, right, to, you know, to beat it. But then you go on to the next stage, so to speak, or in this case, the next fighter, and it's like, oh, another new set of challenges, right? But yeah, just the graphics in this alone are just, they still really hold up really well. Definitely, probably the series for me from Nintendo that I wish would make a comeback. I think two other series that people really like that they wish would make a comeback is F-Zero and Star Fox. Which, granted, I mean, it would be cool to get those games back, but this is the one that I kind of hold my breath for. But I think it'd be kind of I saw this thing one time that had some points as to why possibly Nintendo hasn't been bringing this game back, because the last one we got was on the Wii. Oh, perfect timing. And that game was fun too. Also, if you've never played Punch Out on the Wii, because I feel like that's another game that doesn't really get talked about too much. It's just a really fun game as well too, and I haven't gone too far into that one. And I mean, you know, it's not my favorite one just because with the Wii, the motion controls on it aren't, you know, I don't know, it's not my preferred way to play, but it's still fun. But I think a lot of it, why they probably haven't brought this one back, is that if you look at the game, right, and this is even true of the Wii one, the stereotypes of the game, of the characters, right, from like whatever nationality they come from, they're pretty bold, and I always thought it was a big charm to the game. You know, it's funny, and I think it's all done in good humor to at least from my opinion. But you know, we do live in different times now and all, and so potentially that's maybe one of the reasons why they haven't brought this game back. Like, I don't know for sure. You know, we get this, you know, like this guy here, Bear Hugger, you know, Canadian, you know, Canada. He's Canadian, and bears, you know, and big burly man. I mean, is that really offensive? I don't know, you know. But it's like I'm Hispanic, and so there's the Mexican luchador in this one. I forgot his name, but I think it's hilarious. Mass Muscle, you know. But like I said, I guess we live in different times, and maybe that's not the reason why, but it is something that I saw once, and that seemed to make some points as to maybe why Nintendo hasn't brought it out. But another part of it too also might be just because it's a, when it comes down to it, it's a fairly simple game. It's challenging in terms of like figuring out their patterns, but once you've figured out their patterns and all, there's really not much else to the game. And I don't know what else you could really do as far as for like game modes. Maybe some kind of like I don't even know how this would work, but maybe like what they did with Tetris 99 and F-Zero 99. I don't know. Is there a way you can do that with Punch Out somehow? I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But either way, I mean, great game. I love this game. Oh, I'm a little rusty. Die, 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 die. But yeah, just hella fun game. I mean, if you like this like arcadey kind of games, this is definitely a really good one. But I think a lot of people have played this game if you're somewhat into old school gaming. But yeah, just a game that I love coming back to from time to time and just getting some rounds in. I've never actually beaten this game though. I've gone pretty far. I've gone to the extra circuit that you can unlock. So there's the 3 of them, right? And then after that, there's, I believe, the 4th one. I've gotten there, and I want to say I think I've beat the first boxer, but I haven't beaten the second one. I mean, the timing you have to do. I mean, it gets really the opportunities you get right then all to make your move. It gets really small on the window of time that you have to launch your offensive strike or whatever. And I don't know, I'm getting a bit older, so I'm just not quite there. But I don't know, maybe I'll keep trying, because I do know, like, when I play this game and I play it straight through, right, without taking like a little bit of a break, I do get a bit of a wind behind my back to make some progress in it. So I don't know, maybe one of these days I'll just sit down and really try to beat this game. But either way, even though I haven't beat it, like I said, I've gone pretty far in it, and I played it tons of times enough to know that this is definitely one of my more funner games of all time, just to pick up and play.
Let's rock, baby.
And at my number 95, as the man already said himself, Devil May Cry. Oh, that rhymed. But yeah, this game here, it's just tons of fun. This game here, there's always a game at each generation, at the start of a generation, or I should say towards the start of a generation, that when it comes out, I'm like, this is the next generation, right? We're finally in, playing something that we really couldn't play the generation before. And so, as I said with Metal Gear Solid 5 for the 8th generation, I feel like that was probably it for me, where I was like, okay, the graphics on this, the game mechanics and all that, this is something really cool, right? And for the 6th generation, for me, I think it was this one. And the crazy thing was that I was already playing some really good games on the 6th generation prior to this game coming out, because the Dreamcast, it came out in 1999. And I was playing some really cool stuff on there, but nothing really seemed too far more than what we had played in the previous generation, just a lot prettier, right? But when this game came out and I got my hands on it, I was just like, this is pretty freaking cool. And just the attitude of the game, that's very in your face, like, and the action style, it brought like this new style of action, of 3D action gaming that we didn't really have before. Because, I mean, there's been attempts at it, but a lot of times the controls were still a little clunky. Things didn't really respond correctly. The collision was off on a lot of games, and I don't know. It just seems like they can never really quite get it right. So whether if it was a matter of just the more processing power, the more experience with developers, right, to get the gameplay right and all, this is the first game that I felt like they really got it right, and it was pretty badass. And just the whole anime aesthetic to Dante's character, he seems to kind of take inspiration from characters like Space Cobra and maybe somebody else. I'm not quite sure on that, but that's just the impression that I get. And the combination of like going between your swordplay and gunplay and a lot of like the cool different power-ups that you get in it, the overall demon hunter sort of vibe about it, and Dante just being a bit of a smart ass but cocky and all. It just had a lot of like attitude to it that I really loved. And it was almost like that 90s kind of attitude that you saw in a lot of characters, only taken up to the next level for me. And I was really blown away when I first played this game, and especially after you beat the third boss, or not the third boss, on the third level, the boss, the kind of fire tarantula looking thing. I was just so floored by this game. It's very adrenaline inducing and really challenging too. Also, where the story goes, and I mean the story, it's fun. It's not anything like really dramatic or whatever, right? It's as a matter of fact, it's like overly dramatic. The whole, filled your world with light little dialogue that he has is pretty cringe, but it's so funny. But just where like the story goes, and all, like when you get to the last boss, it's pretty crazy, and that's what I love about it. And I have this one. This is the Devil May Cry game that I have on my list because a lot of the other ones are really great. Some of them are okay, but and on some of them, like the other really great ones, they improved on a lot of the game mechanics and all. It's just this one I just feel had the right combination of like good gameplay, but also I just love the stage layout of this, the setting to it. I think this is probably my favorite voice portrayal of Dante also, and just for a lot of those reasons, there is why it's still my number one game in this series, and it is here on my top 100 list again at 95. If you haven't played it, definitely check it out. It's available on a lot of different modern systems. So yeah, just a blast to play through. And at my number 94 comes a game that it's on my beloved Saturn. It's a system that, just didn't get a whole lot of love back in the day, but yeah, I'm glad that it's finding a bit of a cult following now because there was just such a lot of great games on this system. And this is one of them right here, Astal. And what I love about this game, outside of just the game itself, but for the Saturn, is because it's a game that really shows off the strength of what the system could do. It was a bit of a 2D powerhouse, and just the graphics, all the sprite work on it, and all the parallax layers in the background, just makes for just a really stunning game to look at. And for me personally, as far as like just graphics that I just love seeing, right? The artistry of it and all that. This is one of my favorite games of all time as far as graphics goes. And it's a fun game too. Also, I really like it a lot. It's a platformer that the game mechanics aren't anything too crazy in it. And also it's not really revolutionary, I would say, but it's still a fun game. And I just love the fantasy aesthetics to it. Reminds me of things of like The Neverending Story or Dark Crystals or, Labyrinth from, back in the 80s. And so I love it for that there because I'm just a huge fan of that stuff. And Astal himself I just think he's a cool little character. Definitely feels like a Sega-made character. I don't know, just something about him that I really like. And it's a charming little adventure. You get this bird here that starts following you. But it's not too challenging, so it's not like, I wouldn't say that you play it for. Some bosses are challenging on it, and some stages are challenging for sure. It's not like a complete breeze through, but it's not something that is gonna. If you're playing if you wanted to play as a platformer for the challenge of it, you're probably not going to get it for that. But it has some fun mechanics on it. And, Astal, he's a bit of a hothead. And also just the way you can use some of his powers. Kind of show off, who he is as a character. And so the level designs are really fun. Just some of the obstacles that you face on here I think are pretty cool. And the stages, as you can see, right, they're not super long. That's just the first stage and all, but it kind of gives you an idea, right, of what to expect on the gameplay part of it. But like I said, it was really good as far as showing what the Saturn can do. And this stage here, I think, is a good example of that, as you'll see here. The parallax layers going on in the background, and then you get these kind of winged creatures, it's just something that, I mean, the Saturn could really do these kind of things really well. It's just unfortunate that at this time we were going more towards 3D, but this is just really impressive though, and I feel like it's aged really well too. Like just the effect there, right, of those winged creatures, I think it's pretty cool. But Astal, I mean, it's a great hidden game or hidden gem from the Saturn. The or not, well, not just the Saturn, but Sega's library of games overall. You know, not too many people know about this. As far as I know, I don't think Astal has ever been on anything else that's been released, like some of Sega's games, because I know like on some of their like kart racing games or even some of the sports games that they had back in the 6th generation, I don't think there was ever any other mention of Astal. And it's really unfortunate because I just love his design, the world to it and all. I think there's a lot here that they could have, you know, I mean, if not like a sequel, at least like an appearance of some sort, right? In one of like those Sega racing games. But unfortunately, this character's just been lost in time. And because of that also, it's not a very easy game to find and play. Like as far as I know, you can't buy this game anywhere at retail or on a digital storefront. And if you want to buy like an actual physical copy of it, it's getting up there in price. A lot of Sega Saturn games, unfortunately, are just going to be kind of expensive. And also the Sega Saturn, I mean, as far as free emulation goes, it's not the easiest system to emulate. They've gotten a lot better, and I mean, a lot of the things that we have nowadays, like devices and all that, you know, for emulation are pretty powerful now. But it does take a bit of a beefy hardware to be able to run this game. So just kind of keep that in mind. But for what it is, it's, if you can get your hands on it somehow, it's a really fun little game. If anything, you'll really like it for the graphics and the music also too. It's really pleasing to the eyes and ear. And like I said, it's a fun game. It's I feel like I rank it really high just in my overall games of all time because I love the aesthetics to it. It's got a lot of charm to it. Again, I'm a Sega kid, so I just feel like it has a very Sega vibe to it about it. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it kind of looks like a character that would have been designed from the team that made Sonic. You know, something about the way his eyes are and all. I don't know. His attitude. I don't know who did his character, so I don't know if it was actually that team. It just feels like it. And it's just a game that I really hold dear a lot. And wish more people would be able to experience this game because it's just a fun little platformer. Wave Race 64. So this is my number 93 game of all time on my top 100 list. What I love about this game is some games just get the game mechanics for what it's trying to do just so right. And it's almost hard to describe, but the way you're controlling these hovercrafts over the water and the physics of the water as the waves kind of crash into it and your hovercraft kind of bobs and weaves and, you know, goes up and down, right, and all depending on the waves, just feels very realistic that it's kind of hard to explain how they pulled it off in this game. And quite honestly, I haven't felt water physics as realistic as this game and any other game that have come since. Maybe there's some other games out there, I don't know, that I just haven't tried, but you know, and it's not just so much that they feel real, but it's also done in a way where it's just very fun to play. Not even the sequel that came out to this on the GameCube, from what I can recall after I played of it, I was a bit disappointed because it just didn't feel quite right. And I can't quite put my hands on it. But because they got it so right in this one, it just makes for a very fun pick up and play racing game on the Nintendo 64 that it has very high replayability value because of that. You see, some games I think have a high replayability value because you have a lot of choices to do in the game, or you just really like the aesthetics of it, or whatever the case is, right? But some of them, it just has like a certain gameplay hook to it of some sort that just keeps you coming back more and more. And that's what this game was for me. I just love the way the water physics feel in it that makes it just really fun to try to navigate through these courses, right? To get in first place. And doesn't have a whole lot of level, doesn't have a whole lot of content to it, but it doesn't need it, right? Again, some games can just get by, but just doing what it's meant to do and doing it right. And for this reason, this game places, on my overall top 100 games of all time list, because it is just a damn fun game to play because of what it sets out to do. And again, kudos to the developers of this. I would want to see there's got to be something out there, like documentaries and all, like how they got it so right in this game. Again, it's just a blast to play through, and I love it. It's available on the Nintendo Switch Online service, and definitely check it out. If you haven't already played this game for some reason, don't let the old graphics fool you. It's pretty fun to play through. Coming in at my number 92 favorite game of all time is Shenmue 2. Now, really with Shenmue 2, because they're kind of it's all part of one main game. I would almost say Shenmue 1 and 2 as like for this entry right here. But since they are two separate games, I'll give it a Shenmue 2. But really, I would say both of them together. And with this game, well, and again, both parts 1 and 2, it's kind of, if you were around at this time and you were open enough to play this game, I think you can really appreciate for what this game was trying to do. It was, it definitely put a foot forward into like more open world game design. But it wasn't so much the open world part of it. It was just more like a very immersive game that allowed you to live in this world. So the game takes place in the first one in 1980s Japan, and then eventually goes to China. But when I first played the first one, and then this one eventually, it really made me feel like I was immersed in this world, like I was back in the 1980s, and again in Japan and in China. And a lot of that is because of the way you interact with everything, the characters, the environment you're in and all. Something as simple as like pulling, drawers from your nightstand and things like that. And it sounds pretty mundane. And honestly, if you go into that frame of mind, it can be. And again, if you weren't around at this time and all, and you are curious to play this game, thinking it might be like a Yakuza game, you're probably going to be a bit disappointed because it's not really that. It has like combat in it, and you're exploring the world, kind of, I guess, as in Yakuza, but it's just done a bit differently. And the creator, Yu Suzuki, at one point, he was quoted saying, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but he said something along the lines that it's an open, immerse, interactive game, or something to that effect. So again, it's not like an open world game. It's just, you like, one of the things that kind of blew me away about it when I first played the first one is, I go out into the little village, I go into the store, and then I'm looking for some batteries. So I grab a battery, and you actually have to push a button so that the Ryo's hand reaches for the battery and all and grabs it. And then you go to the clerk and pay. And again, all of that sounds pretty mundane, but it was just something about it though and all where it really gave me a sense of almost like being in a virtual reality without it being virtual reality. And it really engrossed you in this world. And the story overall to it, which, from what part 1 and part 2, the way it plays out, it's pretty, it's pretty involving that you want to figure out what's going on here in, for the mystery that he's trying to solve. And granted, the voice acting in it can be pretty bad. It's, if you play it in English, I much rather play these games in their native languages just because it sounds. And I don't know if it's bad acting or not in this in their in native language because I can't quite tell. But I just much rather play it that way instead of the English language. And the English dub on it has become kind of iconic. The actor, I believe his name is Corey Marshall, and there's a certain charm to him and all that, right? The way he plays the character, and again, a lot of it is just the way that probably the direction that they were given to read the lines, because I'm sure these actors are all fine and all. It's just, again, it was, games are still trying to find their paths as far as, telling cinematic stories and all, but it is just very engrossing, very beautiful too. Also, it's you can tell that Sega threw a lot of money into it, which is probably one of the reasons for their downfall too, was because at least the first part of this game, because they were really trying to make this into a big game, but I don't think that the market was quite ready for it. Because so Shenmue came out in 2000. And this one I would think would have come out in maybe 2001 or so. I don't know. But Shenmue 2 didn't come out on the Dreamcast, in the United States, but it did come out in Japan and then in Europe. And maybe that was in 2001 or so. But it was shortly before Grand Theft Auto 3 came out. And Grand Theft Auto 3 just blew the lid off of like open world games. But again, it wasn't an open world game though. And so at least not in the sense like the way we kind of know it now. I mean, it had hints of that, but it was it was also something different, I guess is the best way I can put it. And if it's a very unique game or series of games, and I would just say that if you want to play something that is more low key, almost think of it like again, if you go into it thinking Yakuza, you're probably going to be disappointed. If you go into it thinking more like a walking simulator, like some of these games that have been kind of, getting kind of popular, like Everybody Goes to the Rapture or Gone Home, or What Remains of Edith Finch, those kind of games right there, then I think you can appreciate this game more if you go into it with that mindset. And when I say beautiful, the graphics at the time were really impressive, but some things haven't quite aged as much and all. And so, but it's just the aesthetic of the game. Again, it really puts you into 1980s Japan and China, and the art style of it, and just the music also. It's, in a lot of ways, it's a very beautiful representation of their culture. And honestly, I feel like I learned a thing or two about their cultures through this game right here, just interacting with the people, the way they make the stores look and all. And it made me feel like I was there. Obviously, I've never been to China or Japan, but it definitely made me want to visit, if anything, if that says anything. And it's just a shame that this game was kind of Sega's downfall too, when they really wanted this game to be what was going to get him out of the gutter, but unfortunately it just didn't work out that way. But for what it is though, it's beloved by a lot of people for a reason, and would love to see this game get a little bit more love. So if you haven't played it, check it out, give it a chance, see if it's something that you vibe with. And because again, you have to kind of vibe with it. That's the thing, it does kind of ask a lot, so I understand that. But maybe it's something that you can really dig though. And Shenmue 3 did come out. I haven't really messed around with that game, so I can't really speak on that game there. So this is just mainly for 1 and 2. So again, the Shenmue 1 and 2 were mainly made for the Dreamcast. The first one did come out on the Dreamcast in here in the United States. The second one didn't, but it did come out in Europe. And so because of that, it has English dubbing on it. I don't quite recall if it had, or not dubbing, but the subtitles, but I don't quite recall if they had the English voiceovers. I'm not quite sure, because I did play that version back in the day. But you can also get part 2 on the Xbox, the original one. I don't know. I don't think it's backwards compatible though, like on the new Xbox games. But the versions that I'm playing here are on the Steam. And well, I should say also, not just on the Steam, but also like they did like remaster them for the newer systems as well too. So yeah. So actually, now that I think about it, yeah, you can play it on the PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox Series X and S, Steam Deck, and all. Not on the Switch, but yeah. So there's definitely ways to play this modern, on a modern game consoles. Coming in at my 91st favorite game of all time is Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriot. This game here, at one point, it was my favorite game of all time. I am a sucker for Hideo Kojima's sort of crazy, convoluted storytelling, especially on how deep and weird this series got, after part one. Because part one, well, Metal Gear Solid, I should say, so the one on the PlayStation 1. So that one had a fairly well-structured story, pretty cohesive story for the most part, that it had complexities to it, but you can for the most part understand it. But then as it went along, the story got really kind of over the top, kind of crazy, which I'm kind of a sucker for, though. I can't help it. I just love the combination of really dramatic espionage storytelling with its goofiness and silliness to it. It just, I think only really, at least in the terms of video games, Hideo Kojima's been the one that can pull this level of zaniness off, to put it one way. And I put this one over part 5 by a little bit, mainly because I guess when it comes down to it, it's because when I come to a Metal Gear Solid game, I am kind of expecting a bit of a story to it, right? And unfortunately, like I said before, with part 5, it just didn't really have a whole lot of story. Although, again, the gameplay in that is excellent, right? And, and I love it for that. But and I kind of feel bad putting this one on top of that one, just because this one is very story heavy. And the gameplay that's there, it's good, it's fine, and it has some cool gameplay mechanics to it and all. It's just that this game really is almost like you're watching a movie. And so I can definitely see why somebody maybe wouldn't like this game for that. Because again, it is very story heavy. But I just love the overall experience of it, and I still feel very immersed when I'm playing a Metal Gear Solid game. And this one, for being the conclusion for that story arc that started with Metal Gear Solid up until this one, because the Metal Gear Solid 5 is connected to the overall lore of this game, and then also the other games like Peace Walker and the original Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2, the game that came out back on the old computer MSX, I believe, computer system. They're all tied together. It's just a Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, and Metal Gear Solid 4 kind of tells its story that they all really connect within each other, even more so. And so this was kind of seen as a conclusion to the overall story arc of it. And as crazy as this game gets, as silly and absurd as this game can get, I can't help but again just love it for that. And there was just some moments in this game that really made my jaw drop at the time, and I just have a lot of nostalgia for that now, that it really left an impression on me. And again, a lot of it is just because it built up from the previous games and then, leading to this one. And that's because, from my understanding, Hideo Kojima didn't really want to do this game. He was just almost, it sounded like he was just kind of more pressured to do this, because the previous Metal Gear games were pretty, no pun intended, but they were pretty solid, and they did well for them. So he almost did this one, from what I gather, again, just out of reluctancy, just because he was contracted to do so, or whatever the case was. I'm not sure. And you can kind of see it in a little bit, because there are certain things about the game and all that feel, again, it is a bit silly and absurd, but regardless of what his passion was for when he made this game, it still feels like something that is a labor of love. And it's very epic in scope, where the game goes with its story and all that. I mean, it's really silly but crazy, and very something that, again, only he can do. You're either a fan of him or you're not, I guess, is one way to put it. But a lot of people are, apparently. And so this game, I mean, it was the PlayStation 3 game to get back in the day, and in a way still kind of is, because it's the only place that this game has had a retail release on. It never came out on the PC. It's never really came out anywhere else. It's a hard game to emulate, even if you wanted to, because PlayStation 3 emulation has taken off quite a bit, but it's still not quite perfect. And this game is, from my understanding, one of the harder games to emulate as well, too. The hope is that we're going to get a re-release of this at some point because they've done the Metal Gear Solid collection game that they came out recently where they came out with the first 3 games. And so now the expectation is that this one will come out soon in the Volume 2 because they did call the first one like Volume 1. So, but it seems like it's a very hard game to do though also because this game really took advantage of what the PS3 could do. So it's very unique to that architecture. And so I'm not sure if that's maybe part of the reason why it causes conflict, right, was trying to re-release this game. Outside of like a lot of possible other legalities to it, like they took down the other Metal Gear Solid games for a period of time because of certain video clips that they had. So maybe this is kind of tied to that. And it also had like an iPod on it, and also that probably, you know, factors into the licensing rights and all as dumb as that sounds, but it's just the reality of re-releasing some games nowadays. But either way, I mean, if it's it was on the PlayStation Now streaming service for a while, because that's actually how I played it more fairly recently. Well, it's been already a few years, but was through there. And I have it on the PlayStation 3 also, but it's just I have to bring out the console and get it hooked up and all that to play this. But it's definitely a game that could use a bit of a remaster, just because the graphics still hold up really well, I feel. I mean, you know, what you're seeing on screen here, this is all done in real-time cinemas. And it's just that the frame rate does struggle a lot in this game, and so it could use from a bit of a running on a beefier system, right, to maybe smooth out the frame rate on it. But it's like one of the main games, right, and I'll to still keep around the PlayStation 3 for is for this one right here. And again, if you're a fan of the first 3 Metal Gear Solid games, and I know a lot of people are, you owe it to yourself to still go through this one. And even if you're not too much of a fan of what they ended up doing in this one, you just got to almost see it all the way through. Just to kind of, you know, it's just crazy the imagination some people have, right? And all for their storytelling and characters and all that. And it's, this is definitely what's the word I want to use? Like homage? No. It's just basically like a good way to cap off the series again that started with Metal Gear Solid. And very fun game. And because like the moments that you do play it, right, and all, it's definitely fun, and it has some cool game mechanics on it and all for sure. So definitely check it out if you get a chance to. And the directing, I mean, the just the action scenes and all are really well done. Hideo Kojima has a sense of like making cool action scenes where they're not completely over the top. Like, for example, the way they were in Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, the remake that they did of the first Metal Gear Solid game back on the GameCube. But yeah, definitely another good thing about this is the music as well too. I remember really enjoying the music to this. And we still get David Hayter coming back. Probably I would say probably my favorite performance of him in a Metal Gear Solid game was in this one here. And they took up the stealth gameplay in this one, as you kind of saw how he blends into the environment there. It was a pretty cool mechanic where, you know, before you were hiding in boxes, and also they kind of spoof it here. But it definitely made for some clever mechanics to how to hide from the enemy. That is a combination, was kind of doing its own thing, but also taking a bit from the game mechanics that they introduced in part 3 as well too. See, it's like it's silly, the watermelon kind of blends in with the camouflage, but then you get this really dramatic song. And again, it's just something that Hideo Kojima's so good at it, blending the dramatic moments with the absurdity of it all. Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. Definitely check it out if you can.
Coming in at number 90 for my top 100 favorite video games of all time is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I hesitated a bit to see if I was going to add this one on my list. It is one of the newer entries on here. And one thing that I've noticed is, at least for me personally, I sometimes have a hard time letting go of some of the old classics that they can't be beaten by a predecessor, even if it's a game in the same series. But this one here is like, as I was playing it when it came out, about 2 years ago, I was just having a blast with it. I was having a really fun time, and the whole time I was thinking, I was like, is this my favorite 2D Mario game from now on? And at first I was like, nah, it's no way. It's not better than Super Mario World or even Super Mario Brothers 3. But I kept playing it though and playing it. And after we ended up beating it, I just, it just came to the realization that it's just a really fun Mario game. And I can definitely appreciate for what it's trying to do. And yes, for me, it is better than some of the old 2D classics. It's not better than all of them, as you'll see later on this list. But it's definitely up there. And what I love about this one is I think I played it like right at the right time. And what I mean by that is that I got this game. So, I mean, I was already interested in getting it. And I mean, I can't say I'm like the biggest Mario fan, but I definitely like his games. I mean, they're definitely fun. But what I mean by I played it at the right time is when this game was coming out, I was showing my daughter some of the commercials. I was like, because she's, she kind of like has a passing interest in Mario games. And so I was like, look, the new Mario game is coming out. That looks kind of cool. And so she got a kick out of it because of that he turns into an elephant. She just thought it was funny in the commercials. So I was like, okay, well, if she seems like getting into it, maybe I'll get it, right? And because usually I do try to buy a lot of the Mario games, because again, they are fun. And so, but I was mainly thinking, I was like, well, maybe I'll get it for her. Maybe something she'll get into. And so we started playing it, and playing it, and playing it. And soon, before you know it, I got addicted to the game. My daughter got a bit addicted to the game also. And then eventually my wife started looking at it, and my wife, she's not much into games and all. She just has like a passing interest in them, but she has been kind of getting into like platforming games, and this was kind of the start of it. I mean, she's played some when she was a kid, but more recently, this was sort of the game that brought her a little bit into it to start playing platforming games. So much so that I want to say, I think it was because of this game why she bought her own Switch Lite. So if that's saying anything, right? Again, coming from someone that she's just normally not a gamer. And the other thing too that I loved about it is that we were all getting into it. It's a 4-player game, and so my wife and I and my daughter would play it, and in the 3-player mode, and we were just having a blast with it, and that was so fun. And one of the things that I never really experienced with pretty much any Nintendo system was the joy of multiplayer Nintendo games, because especially starting from the Nintendo 64, a lot of the Nintendo systems that were coming out afterwards were very heavily focused on multiplayer, the fun that you can have with them. I mean, starting with the Nintendo 64 again, it had the 4-controller port up front. It was known as like the Fun Machine or something like that. And then just going forward after that. But I never really experienced that because I would play Nintendo games, but, I would play mainly by myself. And, there was a time frame where I was like, I don't want people knowing that I'm playing Nintendo games. But now that I'm got my kids and all, and, we're all getting into it, it really is fun to play. And we were just all having a blast playing it. And so I just got to thinking, I was like, there is nothing wrong with saying that one of the newer games is better than some of the old classics. Absolutely. I mean, the gameplay is very good. it really improved on a lot of just the way Mario feels in this kind of 2D, 3D. Because there was a new Mario Brothers series of games, and they were fun, they're fine, but something about this one that just feels right. Like, they got the controls right, the level layouts are really fun, and the power-ups are different. Mario has new animations, and so it definitely feels like the next evolution of the 2D Mario game. And then the big catch to it is these Wonder Seeds here, or the Wonder Flowers that you get that just sort of trip up the stage like you're seeing here. And that is part of the fun of it, is getting to see what's going to happen in these stages here as you get these Wonder Flowers. And some of them get really creative, and it's really fun to play. And so it just makes it a joy, right? Just to kind of experience these levels. I mean, if I had any criticism of it is, I mean, it's kind of nitpicking, but, you know, there really isn't much new, though, aside from this little gimmick here, right, and all, which is actually admittedly a very fun one with the Wonder Flowers and Seeds and all, but they're just really not. It's still Mario, right? You're still playing 2D Mario and all, and which is not a bad thing, again, right, and all, but there's only so much you can do, I guess, with the formula that, I don't know, part of me kind of wishes there was a little bit more innovation to it, but then when you beat the game and I was like, no, there was plenty of fun to be had here, and I'm okay with that. So very well done Mario 2D game. Definitely for me, the best one of the more modern ones, and absolutely worth your time if you haven't gotten around to play this one. Coming in at 89 is Daytona USA. Tell me that song does not just bring a certain level of joy in you. It's so cheesy. It is so good, though. I don't know what it is about it, but it's just Sega to the fullest, and one of my favorite Sega racing games of all time, because Sega made a lot of great racing games, and this is definitely one of my favorite ones from them. And one of the things that a lot of Sega racing games have, it's just a very, very iconic soundtrack, and this is definitely one of them. I forget the singer's name, but if you ever get a chance, just watch him when he's singing this, and as he gets so into it, and Sega games are just like the arcade games that they came out with. They're really just joyful. They're really just meant to give you a sense of fun, that you're here for a good time. And Daytona USA, what I love about it is that the track layouts are really well done. It only has 3 tracks, but again, it's the mastery of playing through these tracks, because they're done in a way where they really test your skills out, and they're just fun to go through over and over and over. And they have enough of like cool little set pieces like you're seeing here that it makes it just a fun to look at, and it's really challenging. And it's also because it's a Daytona kind of racing game, you have a lot of cars that you're competing against, so it makes it really thrilling to go through these races, and you're constantly battling 20, 30 or 40 cars or whatever. And just makes it different than a lot of other racing games, right? Because in a lot of other ones, you're maybe facing 8, 12 cars, give or take. But this one, again, you can be competing up against like 40 or so. So depending on the track. But yeah, it's just, this game is just so much fun. And it was a showpiece for the Model 2 hardware. So Sega started really revolutionizing arcade games with their model arcade boards, starting with the Model 1, the Model 2, and then eventually the Model 3. And Model 1 was pretty impressive because we were having 3D graphics that were flat shaded at the time, but they were running really smooth and they looked really nice, and there was a lot of them on screen, but it was still like flat shaded polygons. And when Model 2 arcade, the Model 2 arcade board came out, and I don't quite know for sure, but I think maybe this one might have been the first game, if not one of the first. And when people saw this in the arcade, I mean, it was like, wow, it was really impressive because you're getting texture map polygons, which have more detail than the flash shaded ones, 60 frames per second. And it was just, your eyes would almost just like bleed with like how much you were soaking in, because back then, going to the arcades, when something big dropped, you were really getting like a glimpse of the future. And it was just mind-boggling what we were seeing back then. Because when this game came out, would have been what, roughly 94 or so? We were seeing some 3D games at home, right? I mean, what do we have? Star Fox? Things along those lines. Maybe we had something a little bit more, because Star Fox came out at what, 93, I think, or I'm not sure. But quite a difference though, right? Because when we were seeing the arcade, I mean, it was a huge difference. And so it made you want to go to the arcades and all, because you were really getting the cool experience out there. And even when the 5th generation started coming out and the Sega Saturn came out, they ported the Daytona USA over, but it's a pretty drastic difference. This one looks considerably better, and well, the arcade version than that. And no shit against the Saturn one. That one got a lot of hate back in the day, but that one plays actually really well. And considering what was available at the time, Ridge Racer did look better on the PlayStation, but anything else pretty much, and the Daytona USA was pretty comparable. Again, I know that version gets a lot of hate, but I still feel it was a pretty comparable way to play Daytona USA back then. But the arcade version was really where it was at. So the one I'm playing here is the version on the Xbox Live Arcade, which you can also find on the PlayStation too. And I believe maybe on Steam. I'm not sure. But I believe this one, from what I've seen, I think this version now looks a bit better than the actual arcade did back in the day. So just to kind of see, how far we've come. But even then, though, I mean, I'm sure seeing the arcade version back then would have been just outstanding, because I never actually saw it back then in the arcade. It wasn't until later that I did. But I can imagine for people that saw this, it would have been like, oh my gosh. And it was cool, and I was right at that right age where I was a teenager. And so I'm still fairly young. My imagination is still running wild. And just getting to see this stuff in person was just, because again, I didn't see this one, but I saw some other arcade games that were really, really nice looking, and it was just an experience, and definitely something that I miss happening. Graphics have gotten so good nowadays that arcades they're not really a factor anymore as far as like seeing the best and the boldest of like new technology. But back then it was a cool experience. So Daytona USA, one of my favorite racing games of all time, and definitely worth a play. coming in at my 88th favorite game of all time is Super Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo. This game, I did play it back in, not right away when it came out, but at some point we rented it with a buddy of ours that had the Super Nintendo. So I would have played it a few years afterwards. And initially when I first played it, I wasn't quite sure if I really liked it, because I'm pretty sure we had played Castlevania Bloodlines before this one. So this game came out, I want to say, I think in late 1991. Castlevania Bloodlines would have come out in, was it 93 or 94? One or the other. But so a little bit afterwards. But again, I'm a Sega kid. And so when Castlevania Bloodlines came out, we were all over that. And we were really excited to play that and all. But as this buddy of ours had the Super Nintendo, we were starting to go back and playing some of the games we might have missed out on. One of them being Castlevania. And initially, when I first booted up this game, I wasn't quite sure if I liked it at first, just because one thing that I just preferred more in the Sega Genesis over the Super Nintendo back then was the games just felt more like faster. They just felt better to me. And Super Nintendo games felt a little slower. Now, the way it was advertised back then was it was because of the blast processing, which I know, I get it. That, was probably all just a big old fluke. But I swear, Genesis games just felt faster, something about them. So initially, I don't know, something about this one that I just didn't quite like, something about the aesthetics of it that I wasn't completely sold on. But then I kept playing it, and eventually it ended up really growing on me. And one of the things that really helped me get into this game was the music. I mean, like this song right here, I believe it's called Simon Belmont's theme. This is such a great song. And just, as I kept playing the game and all, and then the music just really kept hooking me on it. So much so that I just eventually really ended up appreciating this game more. So it's crazy how that kind of worked, right? That a song just kind of or the soundtrack just made me appreciate a game more. So I don't know, do you have games like that maybe the song just really, not just so much elevated the experience, because music can really do that in a lot of good games, in a lot of games, but to the point where you ended up appreciating just the game more, like the gameplay and all that, where, because this is kind of what happened to me on this one. And so much so that I just, I really ended up really liking this game, and I go back to it every so often, just because I feel like the music really, I don't know, I just love the kind of gothic sort of feel to it, but yet with a sense of like hope and all that. I don't know, it's kind of weird to explain, but Castlevania games usually have a great soundtrack, and this is one of the better ones here. And like I said, right, because of the soundtrack, that just made me really appreciate the game more. It's pretty difficult, but it's not quite as difficult as some of the older Nintendo Castlevania games that came out. And so this game, in a way, it's like a remake almost of the first Castlevania game. So you can kind of go into it looking at it that way. So if the original Castlevania game is a little too old for you, which you should still, give that game a shot. Maybe but if it is too old for you and all that, maybe this one would be better suited for you, right? Because it is sort of like a remake of the first one. So, yeah, just a great game. Definitely one of the better Super Nintendo games that came out early on in its lifetime. It is affected a little bit by some of the infamous slowdown that the Super Nintendo had at first with some of its earlier titles, but it doesn't stop it from being a great game. And the levels are really fun. The bosses, I think, leave a little bit to be desired, but the last boss fight, it's really outstanding. And yeah, just a great overall 2D action game from on the Super Nintendo. So this is before Castlevania started doing more Metroidvania kind of games. And I do miss these kind of more straight action Castlevania games, because they definitely were gems out there. And this is among one of the better ones. Coming in at 87 is Metroid Zero Mission. And this game here is one of the better examples of how to do a remake. You're taking a game that had a really good foundation with Metroid, the original one on the Nintendo. But that game has issues. It has a lot of archaic game design as far as like how you get your power-ups and replenish your life and all that. But the level layout, the world, the concept of the game, going back and forth through the levels to find new equipment so that you can open up more parts of the game map. All of that was just very clever and innovative and very fun and addicting. So what Nintendo was able to do here is revisit that game, the original Metroid game, but enhance it with better graphics, improve just overall gameplay, character control, the way you replenish your life, your items, makes things a lot speedier, giving you a map, and just improved on the original one so much that it really is kind of a game on its own. And I'm usually one to say that even if there's a remake out there and it's shinier, flashier and all that, to give the original still a shot. This is one of the few examples that I can say, if you really, really don't want to play the original one, you're fine with just playing this one because it improves on the original one so much that it almost makes the original one, I don't want to say obsolete because again, there was a lot of heart and soul that was poured into that one, I'm sure, but this one improves on it just so much that it is kind of hard to go back to the original one. And so it just kind of shows that there was always a good game there. It's just that, I just needed a little bit of more, just to be a bit, just needed more better hardware and, updated mechanics for it to really shine, right, for what this game could really be. It's, like I said, it has mainly the level layout of the original Nintendo one, just sort of improved in a lot of different ways. And now it has more detailed background, so you're kind of able to tell more where you're at, and it's not quite as easy to get lost even without even if you don't look at the map. And it's kind of like Super Metroid, but speedier. Like Samus is a lot more zippy in this one. Her jump is just more faster, and just the way she moves overall just feels more fast, and it's great. It's not my favorite 2D Metroid game, so spoiler on what might come next, but it's, I don't know, it might be one of my more fun ones to play because it's just a blast to play through. She's really fun to control in this one, and it's not too super hard, it's not too super long either, but it certainly is fun, and I never get tired of playing this game. I'll revisit this game from time to time. It's just always a joy to play through, and just trying to get better time on it and all to beat the game. And really the only thing I can say on this game that I have a bit of a complaint on, which was true, especially true of the original one, is, I don't know, you can say get good or whatever, but that mother brain fight at the end, Jesus, it drives me nuts sometimes just trying to beat that with all the different lasers attacking you and all those like rings attacking you and all. It just drives me insane. But either way though, still a very excellent game, and it also has an expanded section after you beat what was considered the normal game before. I don't mind that section too much. It's cool, but it is rewarding at the end, towards the very last stretch there. It is pretty cool, but I could take it or leave it, right? A lot that it's there, cool, but if it hadn't been included, cool also. But just the main core of this game though, it's like I said, it's a blast to play through and definitely worth your time. Oh, and also, just as you've been listening to already, the music, the kind of updated versions of the classic Metroid tunes are just really well done. Just playing through this version right here, when you hear the song, it's just very inspiring, very well done. And kind of harkens you back to the original Metroid game, but just, in a much more, it's just done a lot better. Classic game. So coming in at 86 is Grandia, and that's how I'm going to pronounce it. I should say right now, some of these names I might butcher. I'm just going to say it the way I've always been saying it and leave it at that. If I end up finding out the correct way to say it, then I'll continue saying it like that from then on. But until I hear otherwise, I'll just go with the way it sounds like in my mind. But Grandia, so this game, what I'm playing right now is the Sega Saturn version with an English patch, which is awesome that they've been able to do that for a lot of Saturn games that were only released in Japan, because there was a lot of great games that unfortunately just never got translated over here, this being one of them. Now, this one eventually did end up coming out on the PlayStation, and eventually there's like a HD version that you can get now on the modern consoles. But for this little showing here, figured I'd use the Saturn version because this is originally what it came out on and what I believe it was originally programmed for. And from what I understand, I haven't really compared the two, but it's been noted that the Sega Saturn version looks better than the PlayStation. I think that if it really does, it's going to be little things here and there, because I'm looking at it right now, I can't really see a difference. So if there is a big difference, or if there are differences, I think it's something that you would really have to put the two side by side. But whatever the case is, though, it's such a charming RPG, very whimsical, it definitely gives you that sense of going on an adventure, right? Almost like, and what's funny about it is because the characters are on the younger side, so it kind of makes it feel almost like a Goonies or something like that, where it doesn't take itself too seriously. The characters are really silly with each other sometimes, but it knows when to get serious as well too. But as you can see there, it's kind of funny. But yeah, just a very charming game. And this game, when it originally was first announced, it was announced that it was coming out on the Saturn, and at the time, I was mainly reading Game Fan magazine, so if I got a little hype for certain games back in the day, or if I talk really highly about certain games, it's because I was kind of influenced by them a lot, but it led me to really appreciate games that perhaps a lot of other people didn't quite as much. But anyways, with this game here, they were talking about how this game is better than Final Fantasy VII and all, and because this game came out in 1998 in Japan, and I remember I actually got the imported version of this one on the Sega Saturn. I think it was the first imported game that I bought, and it was one though that I also downloaded a walkthrough online back in the day, which, if I recall, it took forever to download, back in our dial-up speed days. And it's just because I can get through it, because the version that I played was all in Japanese, and so I didn't understand what they were saying and all. But at least with the walkthrough, it more or less, helped me guide me through the game. And I got pretty far in it with the Japanese version. And I actually still haven't beaten it. I'm a little ways into it on the Switch version. So here's another game too that I do need to finish, but I've gone pretty far into it, and just what I've played already, I love this game. I like playing RPGs sometimes where they don't take themselves too seriously, and I like playing them in between some of the more dramatic ones. It's just like a more of a lighthearted adventure, right? That puts a smile on my face every time I play him. It's very charming. It's very fun, and the game is done by Game Arts, who I don't think it's the exact same team, but it's the same company that also did the Lunar games. So if you're familiar with those too, you kind of get an idea of like the, again, the more lighthearted tone of the games. But yeah, really just a blast to play through. And the battle system on this one is definitely one of my more favorite turn-based battle systems. It's just the way you can use your attack, your heavy attack, to cancel an enemy's incoming attack, and it's just really fun. It keeps you very engaged and makes the battles, I mean, at the end of the day, turn-based RPGs are a bit of a grind that you have to go through, but it definitely makes the battles just kind of go by fast, or the time goes by faster when the battle system is so well done. And the other nice thing about them too is that there's no random encounters. I mean, every now and then an enemy will sneak up on you, but for the most part, there's no random encounters. And yeah, I mean, it's just fun to play through, right, and all. But if I do have a bit of a complaint on it, it is a bit linear. I mean, you're in the town and you can explore in the town and talk to people and all that. There's a lot of great dialogue in this game, and very similar to like a lot of the other Game Art games, is make sure you talk to a lot of townspeople. If you really want to get into the meat of the story, talk to them several times, because a lot of times they have multiple things to say. But you can explore like in town and all. It's just that when you're going in between towns to like one location to the other, it doesn't have like a world map. It just has like a map that you just point and click on to where you want to go, and then it takes you to a certain region. And so, for example, like if you're going from one town to the other, there'll be like some kind of a terrain you have to cross, and you fight some enemies there and all. But everything is pretty linear, though. I mean, there's some you can go off the off-beaten path in some cases to get certain treasures here and there. But it's not, there's not a whole lot of exploration that you can do in this game. So really, you're playing this game for the amazing combat system, a very charming story, another great soundtrack, which I believe is the same composer from Lunar. I could be wrong on that, but whoever it is, he has a really great soundtrack that really fits the mood of the story really well. And I just love the character designs too. Also, the writing on it is really funny and really well done. And again, this is an English dub done by fans, so and yeah, I mean, it runs really well here, at least on the Saturn. And again, I'm playing an emulated version here, but I mean, it seems to run pretty good though. So again, the Saturn could do 3D. It's just, you had to be put in the right hands. But this first little part of the game is kind of cute. You're finding the legendary armor, which ends up being a apron, and then for the shield, it's a garbage can lid. And then I think for the sword, I think it's like a wooden sword or something like that. So it's, like I said, it's a very fun game. If you wanted like an anime kind of sort of RPG of like something like the Goonies, or more sort of like excuse me, Chronicles of Narnia or something to that effect, and all, but more of a lighthearted way or lighthearted tone, definitely check this one out. It's you'll have a really fun time playing this, and it will put a smile on your face. Coming in at 85, this is Strider from Capcom. And the version that I'm playing here is on the Sega Genesis. This game originally became popular in the arcades. I love going back to the Genesis one though, just because I think it's a really well done arcade port, and one of my favorite ports of all time. And when I say ports, I want to do like a podcast or a video of this at some point, where I'm talking about ports that were really well done, that aren't necessarily perfect to what they were trying to emulate, but what they achieved on like lesser powerful hardware, for example. And this game here, again, it's not quite arcade perfect, but it was the first 8 meg game that came out on the Sega Genesis, and really I think just overall in the 4th generation. And I remember they were advertising it a lot, like it's the first 8 meg game, and so it's kind of like a big deal back then. And so again, it's not quite arcade perfect, but it's pretty damn close, and it plays really well. And there's actually a handful of things that I prefer about this one. One of them being the ending. at least from what I've seen of the arcade version. I'm pretty sure the Sega Genesis version has a different ending to it, which I prefer more, at least from what I've seen. And it's just part of one of the reasons why I just come back to this one a lot. And the other thing too, also, just a lot of it is nostalgia, where I just think it was really cool what they were able to do with the Sega Genesis on this, because this game came out prior to Sonic the Hedgehog, and so it was one of the Sega Genesis things that, you know, got people to notice the Sega Genesis. And again, this is before Sonic, and because it's like, oh wow, here's an 8 meg game, and it's pretty much almost arcade perfect. Runs really well, plays really well, sounds really good and all. And it's it just started showing us that we're getting closer and closer to bringing the arcade experience home, which was like a dream come true for us back then, because arcades were sort of a portal to the future, it seemed like, back in the day. And so to be able to start getting things closer to the arcade, it was just it was great. And yeah, just a fun game to play. And it's a pretty short game. It's depending on the difficulty, but it can be a little hard. But it's not too long of a game though. But what I like about it though is sometimes I just do want to play a game that's not super long, but it's really fun. You enjoy the stages because they're very creative. Like everything that you're seeing here, right? This is all just from the first stage. And tell me if everything that you've been seeing here isn't very creative. Like this boss, every little thing that I just did in that stage right there, the music, how it changes in different scenarios. It's just fun to play through. And Strider, he's a very fun character to control. Very original too, just the way your sword looks. It's got a cool style to it. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely, it's up here on my list because, like I said, I do like playing games that are just fun to play, pretty quick and easy, where, you know, you don't have to, there's not a lot of complexities to it. Oops, did I mess up? I did. You know, interesting bosses, you know, like this guy right here. And yeah, just a blast to play through. It did get a sequel too. It was called like Strider Returns, Journey into Darkness, or something like that. That game right there, stay away from it. It really is one of the worst games of all time. It's horrible. But unless you want to just check it out just for, you know, so you say you can check that you checked it out. But that one is really bad. But it was done by US Gold, I think. Or did they just publish it? I'm not quite sure. But there was another sequel though that was done by Capcom, and I want to say I think that one did come out in the arcade, and then eventually to the PlayStation, and that one's pretty cool. It's kind of a 2D characters with 3D backgrounds, which was a pretty cool effect back then. But it's something about this one though that I think is still one of the best 2D action games out there. That's just so cool right there.
Good morning, Night City! Yesterday's body count lottery rounded out to a solid and sturdy 30. 10 out of Haywood. Thanks to unabated gang wars. One officer down, so I guess you're all screwed. Cause the NCPD will not let that go. Got another blackout in Santo Domingo. Netrunners are at it again, poking holes in the power grid. While over in Westbrook, trauma teams scraping cycle victims off the pavement. And in Pacifica, well, Pacifica is still Pacifica. This has been your man, Stan. Join me for another day in our city of dreams.
Coming in at number 84 is Cyberpunk 2077. And here's another game that is a new addition to my list here. And I haven't beaten this game yet. I've been working my way through it. But part of the reason why I haven't beaten it either is because when there is a... Sometimes we complain about games being too long, too convoluted, too much to them and all, which I've already complained about some of that before. But the cool thing, though, is that when they do get it right, when there's a game that has so much, like, life to it, you really want to get immersed in this world and just become a part of it, almost to a point where it becomes like a bit of a virtual reality that you're just getting lost in. And I am a sucker for cyberpunk stuff. So, like, one of my favorite movies of all time is Blade Runner. And I just love the very cyberpunk world, the flying cars, the crazy technology, the, corrupted corporations and things like that, right? I'm just a big fan of it ever since the movie Blade Runner. And this game here is sort of like a dream come true to being able to live in this kind of world where it's very detailed. It's very involving as far as the mechanics to it, the way you interact with the world, the characters, the story, the way you can customize your character, and the detail on the graphics is pretty crazy here. And there's so much lore and things that you can get yourself involved in. Like, for example, right here, I'm just kind of like in one of my game save files, and you can just click on random things, right, and all that. It has like a bit of like backstory, right, of some sort, and it really immerses you in this world. And part of the reason why I haven't beaten is just because I just love getting so lost in this game, where walking around town, doing some side missions, and just living in this world. It's a very violent, corrupt world. It's a very sexualized world too, also, where it just seems like everywhere you turn, there's just some kind of like a lot of sexual innuendos in this game. And I'm not against that or anything, and all. It's not like I'm offended by it and all. But there are times where it's like, okay, it's a little bit much sometimes. But at the same time, it kind of leads to the overall feel of the game where, a world where everything is just so crazy, so corrupt, so like overly sexualized, so overly, we're so overly modified and everything. It's almost like taking humanity to the brink of bringing out almost the worst in what we can be as a society and putting it all in this city, Night City. And I'm still, like I said, I'm still working my way through the story, so I don't really know exactly what happens. I'm not too far into it. But what I've played, and I've played it for hours, just kind of exploring and all. And I really like what they're, just the overall tone of it and everything. And the characters are great. I love Jackie Wells. He's my boy. He's one of my favorite side characters. I'm excited to get to the point where you meet Keanu Reeves. I haven't even gotten to that point yet. And just a lot of the side characters and all that you come across, right, are very fascinating. And it's just a joy to play through this game. And it's a very beautiful looking game too. So, and what I love about it as well too is that all the different ways you can play this game. So, for example, I am right now playing this on my Xbox Series S, but I also have an Xbox Series X in my living room. And so obviously with the Xbox, I can just go back and forth, right, between my save files on there. But what's cool about it though is that it also has cross progression. So meaning that I can play, because I had this on the Switch too, which actually looks really good. If there's some sacrifices, right, that you'll have to make, but the fact that you can play it portably, and all in a very user-friendly way is pretty awesome. And then I can, for example, play it on the Switch too in handheld, save my file to the cloud that CD Projekt Red has, I think on their servers or somewhere, and then log into, let's say, my Xbox version when I'm playing at home, load up that file, and then I'm playing the nicer graphical version on my big screen TV. So it's awesome. Now, granted, I spend some money on these games and then on these systems and all, right? So it's not that, you know, obviously that option is not going to be accessible to everyone, but if you do have various different systems, just know that they're going into this game, that it is the save files can go from different platform to platform. And my understanding, I think you can go between the PC and the PlayStation 5 version also as well too. So, you know, very cool. And yeah, I mean, I'm on this part right here where I'm in this kind of building and I'm about to go into this room to try to take some kind of a data chip, I think. I'm not going to go too far into it because, again, I don't really want to do like a lot of spoilers here, but very cool game. And I am excited to continue playing this because I'm finally getting to the point where it's like, okay, I need to just play this game. Like, let's get through this. And that's where I'm at right now with this game. And yeah, kind of excited to see where this game goes. And I also already have the Phantom Liberty DLC. So excited to get through, go through that one as well too once I'm done with this main campaign. But yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 or 2077, however, I guess you want to say it. And, and it's also just one of the, I mean, this is pretty well known now, but really, I mean, I feel like it should be called out still. Well, maybe not still so much, right? But it definitely was, it warranted a lot of the criticism that this game had at first because of its botched launch. I mean, it's pretty much legendary now, but whatever the case is, and they should still be held accountable for what they did, but what the end product ended up becoming, it really is something else. And so at the least for that, kudos to that. And that's definitely something that they should be applauded for. But yeah, definitely, if you haven't already, check this one out. Okay, so now we're on to number 83, and that's Crash Bandicoot. Who would have thought that the people that made this game would go on to do stuff like the Uncharted series or, The Last of Us? But this game came out in 1996 on the PlayStation, and it came out, there was 3 games that came out around the same time that were kind of like the mascot games or sort of like a flagship game for the main 5th generation consoles. So that was Knights for the Sega Saturn, Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64, and then Crash Bandicoot for the PlayStation. And so at the time when this game came out, everyone seemed to think that I was like, oh, wait, is this going to be, the PlayStation's mascot going forward? It was a good game. The character was pretty beloved. Some of the commercials they would come out to where he's outside of Nintendo's headquarters are pretty funny. If you weren't around from that time, check him out. It's kind of funny how he's calling out Mario, where he has like a megaphone and he's outside Nintendo's headquarters. And he's like, "Hey, plumber boy," or something like that. It's kind of funny, but yeah. So I have this one on my list here just because it's just pure platforming joy. It's fun to control. The animations are really great, and I thought it was the graphics still hold up on this one pretty well. I just used to love to see the animation on this game because it was like the first time I had seen a 3D game that almost started matching like a lot of like 2D animation. He's his moves are very cartoony. The way he animates almost looks like a Looney Tune almost, and I mean everything from like, the way those, what are they called? Wumpa fruits or whatever. They animate the boxes when they, the ones where you can bounce on their animation too. And the game is just so full, looks just so colorful and full of life that it really seemed like I won't say like they jumped a generation when, but it really made this it could compete with a lot of like Nintendo 64 games, I feel, in a lot of ways. Now, the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64, the way they do their textures is different. And, but this still came kind of close to that. And in a lot of ways, I feel like the textures that are very detailed in this, and I can really go toe to toe with a lot of Nintendo 64 games, like some of the better looking ones on that system. and it just sort of showed the artistry that Naughty Dog had. And I love the level layout on this again. And one of the key things to a good platformer is that not only that you have the jumping mechanics down well and whatever attack you have, right, that the collision on it is well done and all that, but a lot of it too also is just the levels where they're fun to play through. They're not super long, and there's just a lot of variety to them. And so, for example, this one, you're going through the jungle and all, but just some of the different tasks that you end up doing, right, and all, it really makes each level unique unto itself, and it has something about it, right? Like here we have those roller things, and it just helps the stages stand out, right, and all. It makes you really wanting to go back to the game and play, just because you know that each stage is going to be something different, and kind of keeps the game from getting monotonous. And that's one thing that Naughty Dog was always really good at doing, is just having a lot of variety and how you play their levels or set pieces or what have you, right? But yeah, this is just a very fun game to play through. And honestly, I have this one on this spot here because you might already be asking yourself, like, wait a minute, sure, part 1 is good, but have you played part 2 or part 3 or part 4 even? And the thing is that I have, but not that much. So I'm pretty sure that if I were to go through either one of those, part 2, 3, or maybe even 4, I could probably even appreciate them more than this one. It's just this is the one that I have the most experience with, that I've actually beaten, and so that's why this one's on my list here. But I never played a lot of because there were several ones that came out in the 6th gen, like Wrath of Cortex, I believe, and some other ones I forgot their names of them. But I'm not too familiar with those there, so I'm not gonna count those. But this is the one that I really am familiar with, and so that's why it's on my list here. But yep, I'll eventually get to part 2 and 3 at some point, and I'll probably start with the PlayStation version, then eventually maybe the one on the Insane Trilogy. And so just on that note there, as I'm going through these games, right, some of these games are going to have a more modern version. So again, Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3, you can get them all like in a modern version on the Insane Trilogy, and that trilogy is great. It's really well done. Looks beautiful, but something about it though, that the platforming just doesn't feel quite like this one. You might even like it more. It's just that it feels more, I don't know, it's almost like you have to be more precise in that one. And where this one, not quite as much. And I could be wrong on that, but I want to say that I think I've seen some reports on that too as well. And that's at least the way it felt to me. And so, these games can be a challenge, but I feel like that one made it a little bit more challenging just because of the control style. But like I said, right, I would just say that if you do play the Insane Trilogy, because it's probably going to be it's the one that's more accessible and all, because these original ones, they were on the PlayStation 3 on the digital storefront, but other than that, you can't really get them anywhere else. So if you want to play Crash Bandicoot, you see the more modern one, at least try to find a way to play this one if it's not too much out of your way, just so you can kind of see how it all started. What I really wish they would do is that if you're coming out with an updated version of a game, so let's say like the Insane Trilogy, okay, cool, that's awesome. I'm glad that you're trying to keep it alive and all that. Why not just include the original ones too with it? It shouldn't take up too much memory. It shouldn't be that hard to just, even if it's just an emulated version of him, that way you're keeping him alive. You can, and that way people can compare between the two. But just wishful thinking. But anyways, yeah, very fun game and great series. Coming in at number 82 is Horizon Zero Dawn. One of the most breathtakingly gorgeous games that I've seen. It's just a very beautiful game. The art design, the overall quality of the textures, however you want to call it, the style of the world, when you get to see the big old, robots, it just truly is a very stunning looking game. And this version that I'm playing here, it's the upgraded version that came out on the PS5, which, the changes are, when you put them side by side, you can see some differences. Like the character model, especially Aloy, she does look better, and there's just a bit more detail and all, but not a huge difference. I mean, the PlayStation 4 version, looks really well already. And so if you just happen to have that version, I mean, if you're doing, I think it's a $10 upgrade to get the PlayStation 5 version. So, I'd say it'd be worth it, but I wouldn't really stress too much about it if you can't get it for some reason. But either way, however you play this game, though, I mean, it's a really stunning looking game and one of my more favorite open world games. So for like an open world game to really grab me, I really want to be taken away to whatever world that you're inviting me to live in, right, for a while. Because a lot of times these games are kind of long, and so you're going to be here for a while. And so, like, what are you going to let me live in for a while? And so that's a combination of like the characters that you're playing, the overall lore of the story, the how believable everything looks. Like in this one, everything from like the rope there, holding that ladder together, and the outfits of the people, just really a combination of all of that, right? And what I like about this one is that the action gameplay on it is pretty fun, and it's trying to take down some of these mech dinosaurs in it, or mech robots. It's pretty fun and really challenging. But you get a lot of cool tools at your disposal, like you'll get tripwires, you get a variety of different like bows, and just makes for just a really challenging but fun and rewarding gameplay. And the story to it is actually really good too also, where when you first boot up the game, right, you're like, okay, so you're kind of in a more, like the seems like the humanity has lost a lot of its technology, or does this take place in the past, or there's a lot of mystery around that, right? Because they have like bows and arrows and all that, and they're wearing like fur skin and all. So you start thinking, I was like, well, does this place take place more like in the past? But then you see these big old mech robots, which look very futuristic, like this right here. And so then it's a big mystery, right? Like, what is going on here? What's the mystery? How did this world come about? And unraveling that story is pretty fun, and it's pretty intriguing. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, you're looking at it right now, right? I mean, this game looks pretty stunning. And I've only played it with the PlayStation 5 version for a little bit. And yeah, I mean, it is better looking than the PlayStation 4 version. Again, not by a whole lot, but it's if you've never gotten this game before, then I would say, yeah, this is the version again.
What you doing to them?
The rain effects look really well done as well, too.
Brace yourself!
I'm playing this on the PlayStation Portal. I do my podcast here in my little office that I have, and my PlayStation 5 is out in the living room, so to get everything set up out there to try to record a podcast out there is not the most convenient. So I think for anything that I'm going to play that's on my PlayStation 4 or 5, I'll probably just play it on the Portal like this, which is running pretty smooth here. So far my internet is holding up here in the room. Oh, here they come. And what makes it challenging is, because you're thinking, well, how does a bow and arrow hurt some of these monsters? Well, that's the thing. Sometimes it doesn't really. You have to look for their weak spots. But if you can get like a bullseye hit on one of their weak spots, it's really rewarding. Or a lot of these robots have just a bunch of different weak spots in different parts of their anatomy. And if you can trigger, or if you can hit one right at the right place, then you can really cause some damage and get some pretty cool loot as well too. And I love the sound effects too. I'm someone that I really enjoyed the first few Michael Bay Transformer movies, especially the first one. And one of the things that I liked about them is the way that they made the Transformers sound. They just sound really cool. And this one sounds a lot very similar to it. The designs kind of look the same too as well. So maybe that's kind of why I really got into this one, just because I'm a big fan of Transformers as well. But yeah, wow, this PlayStation 5 version, it does look good. I'm not going to lie. It does look good. Aloy, she's a pretty cool character. I like her story arc in this one. I'm not the biggest... I mean, I don't mind the sequel so far. I haven't beaten that one yet. But part of the reason why is just because a lot of the story, the characterization and all, it's, I don't know, it feels a little bit more bland than it did in this one. But I've actually, ever since the remake or the remastered version of this one came out, I've been wanting to go through this one more than instead of going back and finishing Forbidden West. Again, not that that game is bad. It's just, for some reason, this one just keeps my attention more. But yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn. Great game. One of the best games that came out of the PlayStation 4. And definitely a cool new character that Sony had under their PlayStation brand. And, I mean, it seems like they were really trying to milk this franchise. Like, they did the Lego game, they did a VR game and all. But neither one of them seems to have really taken off too much. But the first one just kind of seems to be the one that people really want to come back more to. And it's just, they just hit it really good with this one here in a lot of different ways. But I would say that, like, if you're wanting to show someone, like, what video games can look like and all, this is definitely probably one of the best ones that you can show people. I mean, it really looks stunning. And it looks nice here on the PlayStation Portal. But, like, especially, like, on a big screen TV, if you have all the bells and whistles, like 4K, HDR, and... you know, all that stuff. It really looks amazing. It's really something else to look at. But yeah, if you haven't for some reason checked it out, definitely recommend it. You can also get this on Steam on Steam also as well too. Coming in at 81 is Contra Hard Corps. And yeah, I love this game. Oh, every time I play this game, I just, right off the bat, right, we're like, oh shit, we're going for it. No holds barred, come at me. And oh man, I suck at this game now. But yeah, Contra. I mean, if you played Contra games before, this one is definitely, for me personally, my favorite one. And definitely probably one of the harder ones. I mean, this game is hard, but it is so fun learning the patterns on this. It's very fast paced. I mean, as you can see, right when I started this game, it's from the start, and it's just like no rest for the wicked. You're just here. It's like the name says, it's hardcore, and I love this game. And this is one where I love the Super Nintendo version, the Contra 3, the Alien Wars. It's a great game. I love that game, but something about this one, and again, I go back to the Sega Genesis games, just felt faster, smoother for me, and I love that about it. And if I'm comparing the two, I'm gonna prefer this one over Contra 3: The Alien Wars. Again, nothing against that game; that is an excellent game. But going back to what I've said before, I am a Sega kid, so you know this is what was my norm. And I swear that blast processing was real. I don't care what anybody says. It was real. I'm going to stick by that. And yeah, I just, the music and everything, like, look at this boss. Big ass robot here. And it's like, nope, I'm going to take you down, boy. It's so cool. I used to get pretty good at this game. It was getting to the point where I could go pretty far into it without dying, but that was back when I was younger, when this game first came out, and I just had more time to really try to learn the stage. But yeah, great game, and it has its little story. And so one thing what I really liked this one was I just love the that you have multiple choices on the stages that you can pick. So like at the end of pretty much most stages, not all of them, but I think most of them, you can select like which stage you want to go. So you have so it's almost kind of like a choose your own adventure. And so definitely ups the replayability value for that there. Okay, let's see. I kind of forgot what he does here. So he goes. Okay, so then I could jump up here, right? Oh, no. Oops. Oh, and there I go. Hey, not bad if I haven't played this game for a while. But it's just a blast to play through. And 2-player also. I don't know. I think I might have played it with my brother back in the day quite a bit. But I just remember we both loved this game a lot. And again, this is where the Genesis really excelled, was just doing like these really fast-paced games. And the soundtrack also, the soundtracks where the Sega Genesis did really good on was soundtracks that were kind of more scratchy and gritty and kind of like metal, techno-ish and all. Those are where you're going to find the really good Sega Genesis soundtracks, because the sound chip on the Sega Genesis kind of has a bad reputation. But that's it. I mean, if you're comparing it to like trying to do like more orchestrated scores and all, well, no, the Sega Genesis really couldn't do that well. But when it came to these kind of soundtracks, in a lot of ways, I kind of prefer it over the Super Nintendo sound chip. But and that's something maybe I'll do a little podcast on at some point, is comparing the two different sounds of the Super Nintendo Sega Genesis, because they were very unique. And this is why I think that people still have a lot of fond memories of this console war of the Super Nintendo Sega Genesis, was because you had very unique experiences with both of them. Regardless of, so here's like this game, for example, right? Oh, like which one's better, Contra 3 or Contra Hard Corps? I don't know. They both have their pros and cons on it. And either way, you're getting a very excellent games, but very different experiences also. And that's what was so cool about this. And the other thing that's cool is that you can pick 4 characters in this game. And each one gets access to different weapons. So the A, B, C, and D weapons that you see there on the top. So again, it kind of upped up the playability value. And this is why this is my favorite Contra one, because there's a lot of variety to the game. You can come back to and have a lot of different experience with it. Oops. One thing the Sega Genesis couldn't do so good is the voice effects. They can be pretty grating. Oh, got him. But yeah, Contra Hard Corps, kick-ass game.